Hey, today we are discussing 3 queen rules that every player must know. I am ChessBrain, an international master, and I'm here to help you improve your chess game. Today we will focus on perfect queen development, and by the end of this video, you will master 3 essential rules that will allow you to avoid common mistakes. And the first thing I want you to remember is that the queen waits. And the rule says don't develop the queen too early. The first rule is quite straightforward. Don't bring queen too early into the game because she will be exposed and vulnerable. And this is the first problem, vulnerability. The queen is the most powerful piece on the board because she attacks many squares. But at the same time, this might be one of the main targets for your opponent, right? So when your queen is exposed, your opponent will try to use minor pieces to attack the queen, what leads to loss of tempo. Just imagine that your opponent plays knight c6, attacking the queen, you move the queen out of the way, and then bishop d7 is coming. And you see, okay, there is discovered attack soon, so I will again escape with my queen. And now what happened is you moved many times with the queen in the opening while other pieces didn't move yet, but in the meantime your opponent brought next pieces to the game, and this is a clear mistake for white. But of course there are some exceptions, and one of them will be, for example, Danish gambit. So we start with e4, e5, we play d4, opponent takes and we sacrifice the pawn, he captures another pawn, and basically the idea is that we sacrificed 2 pawns and in compensation we have these 2 strong bishops and some attacking possibilities in the opening. And here playing moves like queen b3, d5, queen h5, maybe f3, like these moves should be okay, but we have special circumstances here because we sacrificed 2 pawns already and position is very sharp and dynamic. So here moving the queen earlier in the game will be justified. But in general, I don't recommend playing majority of gambits because in my opinion this is just short-term solution, and it's much better to focus on building strong foundations first and understanding game a little bit more. There is also another scenario where we can bring our queen earlier into the game, and I'm thinking particularly about this opening. So white plays pawn to c3, and now black can play pawn to d5, and if white takes, queen recaptures. And now we have a centralized queen which controls many squares on the board, and this is possible because now white cannot use his minor pieces to attack your queen. So there is no knight c3 with the attack on the queen because this square is blocked by the pawn. There is no bishop c4, no bishop g2, it's also impossible. So thanks to that, the queen can stay in the middle earlier in the game. I don't say that black has advantage right now, it's just one of the options that exist, and that would be correct play. And another example I'm thinking about, it's again with the c3 pawn, but this time we have e4, e5, let's say white plays c3 to take the whole center, and I think now we probably also can play pawn to d5, and the reason is that if he takes, we can take with the queen, and we have the same scenario. The queen cannot be attacked by minor pieces, and that's why this should not be a mistake. Let's move on to the second rule. I want you to remember about opponent's threats. And the rule says predict opponent's development. We need to look a little bit into the future. And we start with avoiding alignment. One of the important aspects is that we don't want to bring our queen on the same file with our opponent's rook. That would be easy target for our opponent, and it will allow our opponent to maybe create some tactics. Let's take a look at this example. So here white to move, And quite often in situations like that, I see that people play queen c2. And the reason is, of course, white wants to develop the queen, and at the same time we create some attack on h7 square, so there is additional purpose of this move. But here is a small problem, because many times I see that players play this move not thinking enough about opponent's development. So what does it mean? If you look at our opponent's position, we can see that these two rooks are not developed yet, and we need to figure out the way how he tries to do that. And in my opinion, one of the rooks will stay on c8, as this file will be at least semi-open in the future. So what will happen next is your opponent plays rook c8, and now we have the queen on the same file with opponent's rook, and this might be dangerous. Let's assume you play rook e1, the opponent can take it, you take back with the e-pawn, and now knight b4, and we have fork. Yes, so this is only one example. I know we can play queen b1, but trading bishop, our bishop for opponent's knight in open position should be favorable for the opponent most of the time. What else? For example, you forget about this pawn on d4, I don't know, you will figure out that maybe knight d5 might be a good idea, takes, and now you will lose a pawn on d4. A lot of different things can happen, and basically it's dangerous, and maybe you will later move this queen out of the way, anyway, somewhere else. And this is what I mean by avoiding alignment. Yes, we need to be careful, and we try to not bring the queen to the same file with our opponent's rook, and sometimes we need to look a few moves ahead. So maybe it will be better to bring this queen to e2, in that case it shouldn't be dangerous, or just take on c5, push e4. We basically need to figure out something else. Queen c2 is not a good solution, in my opinion. And let's take a look at another example. So here we play as white, and for example, we have these three pieces that we need to develop, and let's assume you want to bring your queen to the game. So I think it definitely shouldn't be e2 square. Yes, because now we need to think about our opponent's development, and we can see that these two rooks are not developed yet, and one rook goes to the semi-open file attacking b2, and the second rook goes to e8. And if the rook goes to e8, it will be on the same file with our queen. So let's assume we play queen e2, rook e8, and this will allow our opponent maybe to find some tactics. The pawn might be pinned, right? He will play d5, the bishop will go somewhere, and the rook attacks the queen. We want to avoid such scenarios. Okay, we don't want to align our queen with the opponent rooks, but we also need to predict other threats. In situation like that, we don't want to bring the queen to the squares where our opponent will be able to attack our queen in the middle game. So for example, if you play queen f3, what can happen in the middle game is black plays bishop g4 with tempo on the queen. Maybe there will be rook behind, and you will lose material. Or for example, queen d2, there will be some quick action, the knight is not there, and knight will attack the pawn with tempo on your queen. So we need to predict a few moves ahead sometimes. And predicting opponent's threats is like very important topic. So here, one of the good options might be bringing the queen to d3, because I think it's almost impossible for our opponent to play bishop b5, f5 with the attack on the queen, or just attack this queen with the knight. Yes, so this aspect is also very important. By the way, predicting opponent's threats is a skill that I cover extensively in my course on how to avoid blunders. At the moment I'm recording this video, this course is still for free. You will find the link in the description. And the third thing I want you to remember is that we don't attack our opponent too early. Instead, in the opening, our main goal is transition to the middle game. And the rule says, don't attack your opponent too early. The first reason is weakening your position. So just imagine that you play queen to b6, and now your opponent might play knight d2, you capture the pawn on b2, that was the idea behind the queen b6, you play bishop, white plays bishop e2, continuing development, and then you play knight c6 with the attack on the next pawn, because you want to win it, you attack this more times, and white just castles. Completely ignores that, you take the pawn, between move, attack on the queen, so queen captures the pawn, we take it on d4, knight takes and pawn takes. And this is our final position. Black is up 2 pawns, but white definitely has compensation for these 2 pawns, and in addition white has initiative. So let's take a look at it. Black has 2 active pieces at the moment. Actually, we captured, so now it's black's turn. Black, let's play e6 for black to develop the bishop and castle, because black's king cannot stay longer in the middle. And now let's take a look at the position. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I count castling as 1, so we have 5 pieces, and black has 1 and 2. So again, black has 2 pawns advantage, but we have 3 more pieces on the board, and this gives us initiative, gives white initiative in the game, and it's much easier to attack than defend. And what can white do right now is he can check you, bishop d7, and take the pawn on b7. This is one option. Second option is the queen might be trapped. Looks really bad for black, in my opinion, and I would definitely choose white, even though I'm down 2 pawns. The second reason why we shouldn't attack too early is counter-attack. So our opponent might have counter-attacking options, right? When we play queen b6, this is the same position, but now instead of knight d2, we will play knight c3. And after that, we take the pawn, and white plays knight b5. And what happens now, we attacked our opponent, we captured the pawn and wanted to, I don't know, maybe improve the attack. But what happens is now white has initiative and we need to defend our position. So we can play knight a6 to prevent this fork, but then white might play a3 with the idea of trapping the queen later, maybe rook b1, rook b3, knight c3, the queen is trapped basically. Or another idea might be playing rook b1 and rook a1, this is forcing line. We remove the defender, so we win the knight, and then we fork him, take the rook, and white is up a piece. The reason behind it is, why it worked, is because black is basically not ready yet to attack the opponent. Yes, so bringing the queen with the idea of winning the pawn, that's something what I don't recommend. In the middle game, of course, why not? In the opening, we have other things to do. So like I mentioned before, we want to first build solid position, and later we will be attacking our opponent in the middle game. So here in this type of position, I would try to bring the bishop out, castle, think how can I develop now these pieces. So maybe b6 to bring the bishop out, bishop d3, bishop b7, knight d7, and then maybe c5 to open up some files, and rook c8, creating space. And then at some point I will develop my queen and the rook, actually as soon as it's possible. And I think this is much more solid approach, something what I would recommend. You don't necessarily need to play exactly the same setup, but no crazy attacks with the queen in the opening. That's something what I would encourage you to do. So I'm very curious if you follow my advice, or you will attack your opponent in the opening, because it's so exciting to make your opponent very fast. So in this video we covered 3 essential rules that will allow you to develop queen better and avoid common mistakes. And the first rule was, we don't develop the queen too early. The queen is vulnerable, we can lose tempos, and because of that we develop queen later in the game. The second rule was predicting opponent's development. So we don't want to align our queen with the opponent's rooks, and also we predict other threats. Yes, so sometimes we need to look into a few moves ahead in order to bring our queen to the right spot, to not lose tempos again. And the third rule is that we don't attack too fast, too early in the game, because this will allow your opponent to take initiative in the game by developing more pieces. It might allow him to get easy counter attack, and these are the main rules why we shouldn't attack in the opening. Next time you will play your games, keep in mind these rules and notice how your opening play improves. And if you are eager to learn more, please remember to check out my course on how to avoid blunders. You will find the link in the description. I would love to hear your stories about queen development, and I hope you will share them in the comments. And also remember to like and subscribe this video if you found it enjoyable. This is a sign for me that you like this video and you want me to create more. And if you want to master openings even more, I encourage you to check out my video, How to Always Develop Rooks Correctly. Thanks for watching this video. Have a great day.